Aristotle wrote that the aim of art is not to represent the outward appearance of things, but their inward significance. The value of art is to function as an exploration of human culture and the individual. By participating in artistic activity, creating or interpreting art, you are propelling the continual evolution of society. This is reflected in other forms of human creativity, but at this point in human history, this process is being compromised in a way few could have predicted. The internet has given us access to a massive volume of constantly evolving information, but has also placed us in grave danger of destroying intellectualism and civil discussion. In 1999, Japanese video game visionary Hideo Kojima wrote and pitched a sequel to the 1998 smash hit video game Metal Gear Solid. In November 2001, Metal Gear Solid 2, The Sons of Liberty was released. Set in 2009, you play as a soldier codenamed Raiden, real name Jack, and are tasked with infiltrating the Big Shell, a massive offshore cleanup facility which has been taken over by terrorists. The terrorists in question are led by a man called Solidus Snake and call themselves the Sons of Liberty. They have captured the President of the United States, James Johnson, who was on a routine inspection of the facility and is threatening a nuclear strike on Manhattan. Raiden, trained by MGS protagonist Solid Snake and supported by Colonel Campbell and his girlfriend Rosemary via codec, in addition to other characters already aboard the facility, is tasked with stopping Solidus Snake's plan. On the surface, Metal Gear Solid 2 looks like a power fantasy, allowing people to live out a simulated reality of being a super soldier and rescuing one of the most powerful men in the world, which is exactly what the game wants you to think.
Do you read me, sir?
Yes.
Mr. President, it's my understanding that the terrorists have managed to input the code sequence necessary for launching a nuclear strike.
That's correct. I punched the sequence in myself.
You're working for them?
If you asked me 2 hours ago, my answer would have been yes. Right now, they're keeping me alive until my vital signs are reconfirmed.
They betrayed you?
I wouldn't quite put it that way. I wanted power. They sought destruction.
But why stoop to terrorism?
I wanted absolute power.
But you're the president. You have power.
No, I'm just a figurehead.
What?
I don't have any control. The real power is in the Patriots' hands.
The Patriots?
The truth behind this country. I'm not surprised you've never heard of them. Very few are aware of their existence, even among those with code word clearance.
Huh?
Politics, the military, the economy, they control it all. They even choose who becomes president. Putting it simply, the Patriots rule this country.
No.
Hard to believe, isn't it? But it's the truth. The space defense, income tax reduction, and national missile defense programs. Every policy that's been credited to me was actually done according to their instructions.
Space defense was initiated by Congress.
That's what the Patriots want the country to believe. It's all a show. Democracy is just a filler for textbooks. Think about it. Do you actually believe that public opinion influences the government?
No.
This country is shaped and controlled as the Patriots see fit. The people are shown what they want to believe. What you call government is actually a well-staged production aimed at satisfying the public.
Huh?
Don't look at me like that. I'm legally sane, you know.
It's not your sanity that worries me.
The Patriots. Even I don't know who the actual members are. Are they financial, political, or military leaders? No one knows who the Patriots really are. Even my instructions come from a cutout. All I've been told is that every key decision is made by a group of 12 men, known as the Wise Men's Committee.
Your office? The White House?
Merely puppets, pawns in a game. By pledging my loyalty, an insignificant son of a senator was awarded the presidency. Of course, that wasn't the only price I had to pay.
What do you mean?
Even if a pawn becomes a queen, it is still just a playing piece. I wanted to leave my own mark in history, but my ambitions were... You'll understand someday. I wished to be a member of the Patriots. I wanted to wield the power of a king instead of being an expendable pawn.
And that justifies acts of terrorism?
Yes. I'd intended to use the new Metal Gear as a bargaining chip.
Bargaining chip?
But I underestimated Solidus. He actually wants to challenge the Patriots, even if it means the destruction of the world.
What are you saying?
Whether you believe it or not, the balance of power rests in the hands of the Patriots. They regulate the country's various interests through controlled presentation, staging a drama that is palatable to the general masses. Can you imagine what would happen if they ceased to function? Picture a massive political vacuum, a space that every powermonger will try to fill for their own greedy ends. I'm talking about an unregulated power struggle, panic, civil war, chaos. Like it or not, the Patriots is an organization that must continue to exist.
So you changed your mind because you wanted to avoid global chaos.
Exactly. When I told Solidus that I wished to prevent disaster, he replied that pawns can never become players.
And who is this Solidus?
My predecessor, George Sears. That was the name the public came to know him by. I knew him by his code name, Solidus Snake. He was the third snake, preceded by Solid and Liquid, a survivor of the Les Enfants Terribles project. Neither solid nor liquid, he was a well-balanced masterpiece that the Patriots saw fit to entrust with the presidency. However, he fell out of grace with the organization 4 years ago. When acting on his own, he started an incident.
4 years ago? Shadow Moses!
That's right. At the time, the DARPA chief, Donald Anderson, together with certain influential parties, initiated the development of Metal Gear Rex and an advanced nuclear warhead. However, this did not fall in line with the Patriots' plans. What's more, Solidus decided on his own to send his most trusted man, Ocelot, to provoke Liquid Snake, bringing about the said incident. As a result, he succeeded in obtaining Rex and the data on the warhead. But in doing so, he ended up revealing the existence of both Rex and the Genome Army, a blunder that earned him the wrath of the Patriots. Shortly thereafter, Solidus was removed from the presidential office.
I thought he resigned.
That's the story given to the general public. Following his resignation, the Patriots selected me, their new pawn, for the presidency.
But that would mean that the presidential race was...
That was quite a show, wasn't it? It was a well-scripted drama staged by the Patriots for the benefit of the public. Even the Democrats and Republicans were dancing to the Patriots' tune. Everything went according to plan, but for one exception. Following his resignation, Solidus' health was scheduled to fail him, bringing about his untimely death.
Capped?
Correct. But before the Patriots could execute their plot, Solidus went underground with the help of Ocelot. As he avoided pursuit, Solidus gained control of Dead Cell, winning over Colonel Golukovich's outfit. From there, he bided his time, knowing that his opportunity would soon arrive.
What opportunity?
The completion of the new Metal Gear project, an opportunity that would even his odds against the Patriots. By stealing the Patriots' most valued project, he would be able to place them in a very uncomfortable position. It's the only chance he has for survival. Once he has the new Metal Gear, he'll declare war against the Patriots. Needless to say, he must be stopped.
Metal Gear is already operational.
No, not yet. What you saw was Metal Gear Ray, hijacked 2 years ago from the Marines by Ocelot. That was not the new Metal Gear.
Then where's the new Metal Gear?
Right here.
What?
You're standing in it. To be more precise, this entire big shell facility is the new Metal Gear.
What'd you say?
No, I'm quite serious. The upper structure that you've seen is camouflage, designed to represent an offshore cleanup facility. The main structure extends from the foundation all the way down to the ocean floor. The connecting elevator is located on the B2 floor of the Shell 1 core. Arsenal Gear. That's the code name for the new Metal Gear.
Arsenal?
That's right. Arsenal. We're talking about an impregnable fortress carrying a load of over a couple of thousand missiles, including nuclear warheads, all protected by a horde of mass-produced Metal Gear ray units.
Mass-produced?
The ray unit was originally designed for the Marines to be used as a countermeasure against the Metal Gear variations throughout the world. The Patriots had Ray redesigned to protect the new Arsenal Gear.
So now anti-Metal Gears are guarding a Metal Gear.
Ironic, isn't it? That's not all. Arsenal Gear has full access to the military's tactical network, giving it the ability to exercise absolute control over our nation's armed forces, not to mention our nuclear armament. In short, Arsenal was created to be the core of our country.
What kind of idiotic weapon?
Weapon? No. You're not seeing the full picture. Arsenal Gear is more than just a military tool. It is a means to preserve the world as it is. It will establish a new form of control. The Patriots will use it to keep their place as the country's true rulers. Right now, they feel pressured and threatened.
By what?
They fear an overabundance of digital information. The world will drown in the coming flood of information, and they along with it. The Arsenal plans include a system to digitally manage the flow of information, making it possible to shape the truth for their own purposes. In short, the Arsenal system is the key to their supremacy.
The key?
Yes, the GW system is the Patriots' trump card. Arsenal Gear will be fully operational when GW is successfully integrated. Once operational, it will be a completely new form of power for the Patriots to wield. I had hoped to seize the project from them, so that I would be in a strong bargaining position.
Bargain for what?
I'd hoped to trade my way into their ranks, but Solidus preferred rebellion. Outer Heaven, his plan to unleash a nuclear blast over the skies of Wall Street to break the Patriots' control over the business community, is also a key factor in his offensive effort.
Outer Heaven?
Listen, there isn't much time. The football served as the key for activating Arsenal Gear. I've already input the necessary code sequence. It won't be long before GW begins to establish connections with other external systems, and Arsenal Gear becomes fully operational. Stop them before that happens. That is your role.
Role?
You've got to find Emma Emmerich. She's the only one who can stop that thing once it's been activated.
Emma Emmerich?
She's the system programmer for Arsenal Gear. I believe she's somewhere on level B1 in the core of this building.
I thought the levels below us were flooded.
I'm sure they won't let her die just yet, as she's the only remaining programmer for this project. According to Ocelot, she was being held in a locker room located in the northwest part of level B1. Cut transmission and get moving.
With this abrupt change, Metal Gear Solid 2 has changed from a stealth action romp to a stealth action romp regarding a massive conspiracy, and at this point the player believes they are still the centre of the story, and are now descending the rabbit hole, excited and a little afraid to see what lies ahead, what they might find, just as Raiden, the player character, is. As the player gets more invested in the game, the more of what James Johnson says becomes notable. He states that, although a pawn can become a queen, it is still just a playing piece. The player, and by extension Raiden, have both been made aware of the larger power structure governing their actions. For the player, the controller, the structure of the levels, and the objectives set up by the game developers are all governing how they interact with the game. Really, the choices the player has are an illusion, and their actual free will in this story is very limited when looked at objectively. This theme of free will becomes very important later on, and becomes merged with a larger critique of how the player willingly submitted to a system under the pretense that they had all the control. And as the game progresses, we get more insight into what the Patriots' plan actually is.
Are you reading me, Emma?
Yes, loud and clear.
The President said that Arsenal Gear was the Patriots' key to supremacy.
That's as good a description as any.
What exactly is it?
It's a massive data processing system capable of controlling information on a global scale.
A data processing system?
That's right. The system's a social device for maintaining the Patriots' control.
You've lost me.
Well, in this day and age, information emerges from every direction and is freely distributed. A variety of information gathered by servers employing the latest in high-speed communication networks and P2P technology is rapidly circulated to individuals. In fact, the speed of this circulation process is accelerating on an almost daily basis. The Patriots seem to be afraid of this development. Apparently, they believe that their role will shift from dominant to dominated.
Huh?
Let me give you an example. You're aware of Solid Snake's anti-Metal Gear activities, aren't you?
Yeah, I know a little about it.
Well, that's just a small sample of uncontrolled information. I can guarantee you the Patriots did not want Solid Snake's name publicized. Now, look at it like this. Political scandal, corporate corruption, up until now, the Patriots have managed to keep a lid on these and other self-serving events. But with their existing data processing system, they're no longer able to effectively control the flow of information generated at the individual level. With the newly created system, they can fully regulate digital information. High-level information can be categorized in stages, given clearance levels, and deleted as necessary, never to be seen by the public. By deleting such information, the Patriots can shape the course of history as they see fit.
Somebody's bound to catch on.
No, the memory capacity, not to mention the lifespan of the average individual, is extremely limited. On the other hand, digital information lasts virtually forever. It doesn't deteriorate.
So?
The alphabet, 26 letters, right? It could have been 30 letters. What if the 4 deleted letters were controlled by a program?
Impossible.
It's not. In fact, something similar is already underway. Do you know how many genes exist in an individual?
About 30 to 40,000?
Right, that's what was announced at the turn of the century, but there's actually 100,000 according to the original theory advanced by the scientific community. Information regarding the remaining 60,000 was suppressed by the Patriots.
No.
Why? How would you know? Do you know what a gene looks like? Did you count them yourself?
There are research organizations.
Of course, and their reports have already been subtly altered. They're even beginning to believe the doctored reports. GW is a system that allows the Patriots to decide what will be recorded in tomorrow's history.
So what we're talking about is one huge censorship system for deleting information which might be inconvenient to the Patriots.
Exactly. The actual physical core for handling the task, GW, is installed in Arsenal. It's the only system in the world with an optic neural AI that has a parallel processing capacity of 980 trillion Hammets.
I suppose that being a specialist in neural AI and complex logic played a significant role in your association with the Metal Gear project.
That's not the only reason.
What do you mean? I guess there are plenty of other reasons.
Yes, there are.
I understand.
Do you?
So Arsenal Gear was actually designed to protect the GW system, wasn't it?
Yes. It's armed with everything, including nuclear weapons, and is fully equipped with cyber-terrorist countermeasures. Physically and logically, it's the ultimate fortress for housing GW.
But is the AI actually capable of controlling everything?
No. GW is only the system's core. It's only for deciding what data is stored or deleted. The actual subsystem for executing the task exists within our social structure.
What?
Do you remember the panic that gripped the computer industry prior to the end of the century?
You mean the Y2K problem?
That's right. If you recall, our government supplied the world with a countermeasure program, using the internet at full capacity. The program was distributed to every governmental organization, every key facility throughout the world. In addition, the same program was included in an OS application for distribution among the public.
Let me guess. The Y2K countermeasure contained a program designed by the Patriots.
Yes, and everything supplied from that day onward contains the same program.
Impossible.
Do you know how a computer operates? Do you really know the basic principles on how data is exchanged? Nobody's aware of it, but there's a subsystem in place, and it's about to be activated.
Is that why Solidus wants to burn out every electrical circuit in Manhattan with a nuclear blast?
Probably, but the overall system isn't actually complete.
What?
It still lacks the necessary factors for judging situations. I heard they were planning a major experiment in the next few days to provide complex data for GW to study. and suddenly all this happens.
Emma, it's not your fault. If it wasn't for the terrorists...
Yeah, you're right. Well, I think that's about all I know.
Right. Thanks. I think we'd better head for the computer room.
On a meta level, James Johnson and Emma are describing the exact effect that the player has willingly submitted themselves to. You, as a person, are following along in a story made up by a large conglomerate of individuals. This effect is endemic in the digital age, going beyond fictitious stories, with people proactively painting a specific picture of themselves online that they want others to perceive them as. This is not even necessarily done intentionally. Narratives we want to tell ourselves naturally find ways to weed into our thinking patterns, and since these narratives are so staunchly lodged in the identity and politics of people that even things that are clearly fake or orchestrated still get an audience. This is remarkably demonstrated in Metal Gear Solid 2, because despite being ostensibly a nice-looking immersive video game, it does not hide the fact that it is a game.
Raiden, do you copy? You must continue your mission.
I've lost all my gear. I need to locate Snake.
He was never factored into the simulation. Leave him out of this.
I can't do much naked, especially in this temperature.
That's true. You won't be able to attack or enter the hanging mode either.
I think Snake has my gear.
Raiden, take out Solidus and his men. You must recover Arsenal intact.
Colonel, are you under orders from the Patriots?
Your role, that is, mission, is to infiltrate the structure and disarm the terrorists.
My role? Why do you keep saying that?
Why not? This is a type of role-playing game. The point is that you play out your part, and I expect you to turn in a perfect performance.
Colonel, I just remembered something.
What?
That I've never met you in person. Not once.
Complete your mission, according to the simulation.
Colonel, who are you?
No more questions. We have Rosemary.
What do you mean by that?
Over and out. Raiden, turn the game console off right now.
What did you say?
The mission is a failure. Cut the power right now.
What's wrong with you?
Don't worry, it's a game. It's a game just like usual.
You'll ruin your eyes playing so close to the TV.
What are you talking about?
Raiden, something happened to me last Thursday when I was driving home. I had a couple of miles to go. I looked up and saw a glowing orange object in the sky, to the east. It was moving very irregularly. Suddenly, there was intense light all around me, and when I came to, I was home. What do you think happened to me?
Huh?
Fine. Forget it. Honestly, though, you have played the game for a long time. Don't you have anything else to do with your time? Actually, there is something I have been meaning to tell you, but I just couldn't. I think you should know, though. On Saturday morning last week, I saw a guy leaving Rosemary's room. How should I put it? It was like they were intimate. I'm sorry. Sorry to bring this up during the mission, but you wouldn't be trying to give yourself a bogus score using some ingenious trick, would you? That's just about as low as anyone could possibly stoop. I can't believe you sometimes.
Fourth wall breaks are used here to point out the person, whoever they may be, behind Raiden, to not only chastise them and make them aware of their position in the story, but to also show how immersed you were in whatever is happening. Hideo Kojima, series creator, has stated numerous times that he views the player character as extensions of the player, and it is literal here, because while Raiden has not met the Colonel in person before, so too the creators have not met the player in person, and they likely never will. This points out the impossibility of knowing who one is interacting with when engaging with digital information, by showing how you are doing exactly what you are suspecting the less than honest characters you are interacting with of doing, pretending to be someone that they are not. And you will notice in the following clip that both Raiden and Rose bring attention to this dynamic, not just in the world of the game, but also the player controlling his every move except his dialogue.
Jack, how far do you think the Patriots' digital control extends?
I don't really know, but it probably influences a lot of what goes on in our everyday lives.
Even mundane things like which movies and songs become a hit and what kind of clothes we wear?
think taste would be the easiest thing to manipulate. I mean, think about the kinds of film and bands everyone wants to go to see. It's whatever's at the top of the charts.
And if the charts are made up...
Exactly.
But you can't really control individual taste. It's too closely tied to personality.
I don't know about that. Trends have always been about following the leader.
Not necessarily.
The age of direct personal interaction is over. So is the idea of word-of-mouth communication. Rose, you have any friends you've met online?
Yeah, I do.
How many?
Well, if you count only the ones I talk to a lot, I'd say about 20.
How many of those have you actually met?
1 or 2 tops.
Uh-huh. That's how it is for everyone, I guess. And even if your online buddies had fake identities and were circulating false information, you'd have no way of knowing.
Fake identities?
Right. And there'd be no way for you to know for sure.
Well, what about people who do meet face-to-face then? Like us.
Us?
Have you ever really shown me the real you?
I wouldn't even know the real me myself.
But you're being honest with yourself now. Well, that's how I see it.
Well, how am I being honest?
I've never seen you show so much feeling. Fear, anger, even a kind of giddiness. It may seem a strange thing to say, but you're living out loud for the first time that I've seen.
I'm just trying to get the job done. This is war, you know.
I do know that. I'm just saying you're different from your usual restrained self.
What about you then?
I always want to be open with you, as much as I can.
Rose, the Colonel is acting strange.
Oh? I haven't heard from him in a while.
What do you mean? Isn't he there?
No, I'm by myself.
You're telling me you've never met the guy either?
No, and they blindfolded me when they brought me here.
I've never seen his face.
Is everything okay?
Yeah, it's nothing. Don't worry about it.
Jack, it's me.
Hi, Rose.
Jack, I owe you an apology.
If it's about that conversation just now, I'm the one who's sorry.
No, it's something else.
What is it?
That day at Federal Hall 2 years ago, it wasn't a coincidence. I was ordered to keep an eye on you.
Keep an eye on me?
Yes, by the Patriots.
You're a spy?
I suppose. Yes. It's an ugly word. Are you still there?
Was sleeping with me a part of the job?
I fell in love with you.
How could anyone?
I can't excuse what I did. I've reported every detail of your personal life to them these 2 years. What you did, said, everything.
Must have been fun.
But some things I didn't tell anyone.
Oh.
Like what I felt for you.
So that's why you were involved in this mission. I should have known. Why else would they toss an analyst into the mix at the last minute?
I'm sorry. I know what I did was wrong.
No matter where I go, I get used.
I reinvented myself to suit your tastes. Hairstyle, clothes, the way I moved, things I talked about. You say you love the color of my hair, my eyes. They're not even real.
You must have gone over my psych profile with a fine-tooth comb.
It was my job.
Great performance. Had me completely fooled.
What I really wanted was for you to see the real me. It hurt to play out this artificial romance. It was worse to lie to myself than to you. The more love you gave me, the more it hurt. Because I knew the person you loved was just a character.
So it was artificial on my end, too. It was just a game, not the real thing.
Oh, Jack.
I feel better knowing that.
What?
I was in love, or thought I was, with someone who didn't exist. I was trying to be someone I wasn't by loving what wasn't real. I don't know who you really are. The person I knew isn't real. She's not the woman I'm talking to right now. In a sense, the deception was my own, not theirs.
Jack, I thought I was acting because that was my job. But I did fall in love with you. That wasn't an act.
You expect me to believe that? It's okay. You had your reasons, right? Hey, I understand, but I have nothing left to...
Jack!
What?
I'm pregnant.
Rose, what's going on?
Now, here it's worth recounting Metal Gear Solid 2's marketing up to its release. The previous game, Metal Gear Solid, featured Solid Snake as the pivotal character that everyone wanted to play as. Trailers for Metal Gear Solid 2 before release featured the graphically improved Solid Snake in many situations that featured Raiden in the game, and the manual that came with MGS2 claimed that they were both playable characters, when in actuality you only play the Solid Snake in the prologue and Raiden for the rest of the game. This is false advertising and was very much intended, because within the narrative of Metal Gear Solid 2, it's revealed near the game's end that the Patriots staged the entire mission and based it on the Shadow Moses incident depicted in Metal Gear Solid and called it the S3 plan. Its purpose was to train Raiden, the player, into being as good a soldier as Solid Snake and use him to defeat Solidus Snake. Speaking of Solidus, while he was intending to defeat the Patriots, he was also being manipulated by the Patriots via another agent called Revolver Ocelot, and it turns out the entire terrorist threat was orchestrated according to their plans. Both Raiden and Solidus were unknowingly agents of the Patriots despite being enemies. We're going to get back to this later, so remember this. In the real world, fan reaction to the game was one of anger. They wanted to play as Solid Snake. They wanted to play the game because they wanted to feel the same fantasy as they did 3 years ago, about being the greatest, most masculine and powerful soldier in the world, and they instead ended up playing as an effeminate, wannabe Solid Snake in a simple, unremarkable relationship. For the whole game, the player has believed themselves to be the centre of it, and the only, quote, trustworthy person, when in actuality they are performing the biggest deception. Metal Gear Solid 2 is an existential crisis in the form of a video game. The S3 plan is the game of Metal Gear Solid 2 itself. It is a story about how you, and millions of others, deceived themselves into playing into the very misinformation we believed we were fighting against. When we see what we want to believe, any possible doubt is cast aside in the pursuit of security, both in terms of identity and righteousness. This desire is so strong that we are willing to sacrifice being truthful to ourselves and others to keep the fantasy alive. However, art is not necessarily an accurate representation of our world, nor should it strive to be. Art, and more to the point, fictional stories, are about looking at the world, the human condition, and showing through exaggerated means a truth or truths about the world at the time the piece of art was created. So what overarching truth does Metal Gear Solid 2 show us about the real world? I have already spoken a great deal about Raiden and how he essentially represents the average person in the 21st century. But what is more fascinating is what the Patriots and Solidus Snake represent. After the Colonel begins acting erratically, Raiden discovers that Emma attempted to use a virus to destroy GW and Arsenal Gear, but is killed before she could erase the program. However, she exposes that the Colonel and Rose that Raiden has been speaking to the entire game are AI manifestations of the real Rose and Colonel controlled by the Patriots AI.
Solidus, you and the boy were selected because your relationship resembles the one between Snake and Big Boss. Fortune, you and the rest of Dead Cell stand in for the Foxhound squad that Snake took on in Shadow Moses. You're the most impressive collection of freaks outside of Foxhound. We've gone to a lot of trouble to set you up against the boy. That story about purified hydrogen bombs is just the tip of the iceberg. The project was already underway when I sunk that tanker, along with your old man 2 years ago. Throwing your husband in the brig was a part of it too. You were told that the eradication of Dead Cell 6 months ago was an act of the Patriots. We provoked and encouraged your hatred. And you opted for vengeance, just as we planned.
All orchestrated?
Except for the appearance of the real Solid Snake.
After Solidus loses control of Arsenal Gear and it is crashed into the island of Manhattan, the two characters, now aware of how their actions were predetermined and controlled by the Patriots, finally confront each other.
Federal Hall.
What are you laughing at?
Do you know what day it is today?
April 30th?
That's right. George Washington took office as the first president of the United States of America 200 years ago today. And it happened right here. We were going to declare another independence, the dawn of a new nation, here. The end of the Patriots' secret rule, liberation of this country. This was where it was supposed to begin. This is where freedom could have been born.
All you want is power at any cost.
Jack, it's not power I want. What I wanted to take back from the Patriots are things like freedom, civil rights, opportunities. The founding principles of this country. Everything that's about to be wiped out by their digital censorship. Jack, listen to me. We're all born with an expiration date. No one lasts forever. Life is nothing but a grace period for turning the best of our genetic material into the next generation. The data of life is transferred from parent to child. That's how it works. But we have no heirs, no legacy. We brothers are called les enfants terribles. Cloned from our father, with the ability to reproduce conveniently engineered out. What is our legacy if we cannot pass the torch? Proof of our existence, a mark of some sort. When the torch is passed on from parent to child, it extends beyond DNA. Information is imparted as well. All I want is to be remembered by other people, by history. The Patriots are trying to protect their power, their own interests, by controlling the digital flow of information. I want my memory, my existence to remain. Unlike an intron of history, I will be remembered as an exon. That will be my legacy, my mark in history. But the Patriots would deny us even that. I will triumph over the Patriots and liberate us all, and we will become the Sons of Liberty!
Solid as Snake, for his hatred of the Patriots, has ironically found his identity. Despite the fact that he seeks to destroy them, the organization's existence gives him a purpose. He justifies killing millions, working with terrorist groups, and training child soldiers in the pursuit of something ostensibly good, but it's ultimately a constructed story to justify a selfish belief. More importantly, the Patriots in concept are a literal interpretation of the human need to oversimplify the world and break down the emergent complexity of it and pin it on an omnipotent, openly malicious force. Culturally speaking, humans have searched for reasons for bad things happening for as long as we've been able to perceive ourselves. One such entity is Satan, blamed and characterized as the source of all things bad. After the Enlightenment, different schools of thought emerged that promoted a more scientific and realistic look at objective reality, but many movements and groups still find traction by using such techniques. A great example of this is Nazi fear-mongering posters. The text in this one literally translates to, "Behind the enemy powers, the Jew." There are a few reasons why people gravitate to and are attracted by these kinds of real truths. We like to have our positions in society, our beliefs, our values, to be reflected and confirmed as being correctly virtuous by external forces. so much so that we seek it out, and in previous generations, the process of seeking out validation for our beliefs was another part in the machine of evolution, the evolution of ideas. We are going to have to take a trip back in time and talk about a very well-known German man whose last name begins with H. Can you guess who it is? That's right, I'm talking about Georg Friedrich Wilhelm Hegel. And during Hegel's life, he wrote numerous books on philosophical sciences. The most important theory Hegel presented was his dialectic, which at its crux is discourse between two or more people holding different points of view about a subject but wishing to establish the truth through reasoned methods of argumentation. Former philosophers like Plato believed that the discerning of truth of debate happened over the course of the dialogue, that as the debate progressed, the people involved would refine and perfect their opinions in response to another person's challenge of their ideas. This linear evolution in philosophical views or opinions was something Hegel disagreed with. He believed that Plato's dialectic only dealt with limited philosophical claims and was unable to get beyond skepticism, or, as he put it, quote, nothingness. If the premise of an argument leads to a contradiction, then we must conclude that the premise is false, which leaves us with nothing. Thus the conversation cannot continue and thus cannot evolve. Let us imagine you are in a debate with someone who believes the Earth is flat. No matter how many times they attempt to refine their pseudoscience to present their beliefs more concisely, the underlying problem is that their points are based on pseudoscience and the Earth is simply not flat. Thus, Plato's version of dialectics, as Hegel pointed out, is only applicable to conversations that deal with ideas in the abstract. Hegelian dialectics is Hegel's theory of the dialectical method, and it is significantly more complex. In his book Encyclopedia of Philosophical Sciences, Hegel exhaustively describes it. For Hegel, any philosophical premise, political stance, economic theory, or socio-political belief inherently creates an antithetical idea simply in the act of being conceived. These two diametrically opposed positions on the same issue will inevitably come into conflict, the result of which will create a new idea, a synthesis which, in turn, will create its antithesis, and the cycle continues. During the French Revolution, the Jacobins, radical revolutionaries, wanted to completely remove the French monarch and remove all influence of the Christian church and royal family from France, whereas many and other political parties wanted to keep France more rooted in tradition. The execution of Maximilien Robespierre in 1794 led to the end of the Reign of Terror, in which many women and men from a variety of different walks of life began to intermingle. Napoleon Bonaparte then became a head of state, and began introducing reforms that left many conservatives wishing he would return France to more traditional roots, and many radicals wishing he would be more revolutionary and push for greater reforms. Interestingly, what France became as a result of the revolution and all subsequent conflict was a balance between revolutionary ideals and more conservative beliefs. It had the greater equality of the revolution, but kept the church as a big influencing force in the state, but with more limited power. Women's rights were diminished, and the republic system was replaced with Emperor Napoleon. Put simply, Hegelian dialectics explains that humanity moves from extreme to extreme, and through the process of conflict, debate, and intellectual thought, a balance is found via the ideas of both extremes. Through the Napoleonic Wars, the ideals of the French Revolution spread across Europe. These drastically radical ideas became the building blocks for future political movements such as socialism, communism, anarchism, syndicalism, fascism, liberal democracy, totalism, and capitalism. It is important to understand that although Hegelian dialectics is effectively quite simple, and patterns can be drawn when looking at historical events, even within political parties and movements that promote specific policies, there are many people with differing opinions stemming from radically different life experiences who make up these movements, and thus the path to change is incredibly complicated and messy. An example of this is during the tumultuous Russian Revolution. Vladimir Lenin was part of the Socialist Workers' Democratic Party, a party which disagreed on a lot of different issues, and Lenin himself was so uncompromising that the party ended up splitting into two separate parties, the Bolsheviks and the Mensheviks. The Bolsheviks diverted from Karl Marx and Engels' writings and promoted that communism could be achieved immediately if people were willing to attempt it. Contrastingly, the Mensheviks were staunch Marxists, believing that letting capitalism run its course would eventually result in it falling into communism. Even after the Bolsheviks attained total power in Russia, even within the party of the Bolsheviks emerged several emerged multiple versions of socialism, all equally radical yet different. Stalinism, Leninism, and Trotskyism all came into existence based on the life experiences and beliefs of the three men who conceived them, despite them all believing in essentially the same things. Hegel believed that human progression was not a simple or linear affair, and that the only way humans moved forward was through confronting ideas the individual in question disliked, as it was the debate, or perhaps unfortunately the resulting conflict, that would allow humanity to collectively fix the mistakes made in the past and allow us to deal with new problems that arose in the present. But this process required a means for these ideas to be propagated, and they did via natural selection. Mimetics is a term that many people probably haven't heard of before. Fascinatingly, the word meme comes from the Greek word mime, which means that which is imitated. While meme is colloquially used in the 21st century about jokes in macro form, the actual coining of the term was in 1976. The definition of which was explained and defined by Richard Dawkins in his book, The Selfish Gene. In the book, he outlines memes as a unit of culture, an idea, belief, or pattern of behavior which is hosted in the minds of one or more individuals, which is then reproduced because of being shared by the one or more individuals. It is analogous to that of genes, except unlike genes, memes are gestated in the minds of people rather than in their biology. The evolution of information is similarly intertwined with the evolution of life, and thus is subject to similar rules. Natural selection is the evolutionary mechanism in which individuals adapt, survive, and reproduce due to differences in phenotype. For example, there are 13 types of Galapagos finches, also known as Darwin's finches, and they share the same habits and characteristics except for one. All 13 have different beaks. The differences in their beaks might just be the most important aspect of their survival. Two documented examples of this occurred in the late 1970s and mid-1980s. First, when a large drought affected the island in 1977, seeds became scarce. The finches with the largest, toughest beaks were able to eat larger seeds that weren't typically part of their diet, and as a result, they survived. Finches with smaller beaks were unable to crack through the tough seeds and many died. Through the process of natural selection, the birds that were able to adapt reproduced and thrived while others dwindled in number. However, adaptation can go both ways, as seen during the rainy weather in 1984 and 1985. The heavy rains created more of the small, soft seeds and few of the large ones. This time, the birds with the smaller beaks survived and produced more offspring. In extreme cases, natural selection naturally chooses which species live on and which die out. The modern menagerie of animals that live on Earth today, including humans, are the results of decades of natural selection and speciation. Now, there are different variations of natural selection like stabilizing selection, directional selection, and sexual selection, not including speciation and all other factors, all of which influence the larger picture and complicate things. Thankfully, we don't need to look any further into this. The point is that information, ideas, and subsequent memes are all affected by natural selection the same way genetic variations in life are. In Mimetics, natural selection is the result of an idea or piece of culture being able to lodge itself more effectively in the minds of people, which in turn allows it to be replicated multiple times over. Memes that are not easily replicable, are confusing, or for whatever reason are not adopted by the masses fall into obscurity and die. Even memes that were once an epidemic eventually fall out of fashion, and some memes just don't catch on for a myriad of reasons. In Australia before colonisation, Aboriginal Australians didn't invent the wheel, not because they were savages or stupid, but because the largest land mammal native to Australia was the kangaroo, something that isn't exactly the best for pulling large wheeled vehicles. The meme of the wheel didn't catch on in Australia because it couldn't propagate in a place in which using it would be an exercise in futility, and Aboriginal Australians came up with their own ingenious memes that allowed them to propagate and thrive in an environment judged by the European invaders as nearly untenable. The creation of the internet is hard to define, though by 1995 the network had expanded from ARPANET in the 1960s, a network used to reliably encrypt and send pieces of data across the United States, to a global, intertwined body of information. Companies saw the potential for commerce through this never-before-seen level of interconnection. However, online shopping would not become commonplace until the 2000s. However, even in the early days of the digital age, social networking was a central appeal. Most people today have probably heard by this point the term echo chamber. It is generally used to describe a community of people in which beliefs are amplified and reinforced, while simultaneously being insulated from rebuttal. This is commonly what is pointed to in discussions about the potential problems with the digital age. However, echo chambers are not truly the problem. Going back to the Russian Revolution as an example, the political parties were created by people from different walks of life, and even if they were from the same class, no single human life is exactly like another. People's reasons for believing what they believe are always different, whether majorly or not. As a result, a community of thought, whilst possibly insular, does still have entrance and exit points in which people with differing opinions to others in the community can still sway what ideas are being circulated. Echo chambers regarding information and discussions have always existed, and they have never been a problem, and they still are not. What did not happen before the internet was the ability for individual people to create an echo chamber around themselves by manufacturing a truth only out of the information they want to see. People today will take any shred of information from anywhere and use it without context to create for themselves a truth or alternate fact, something either completely fabricated or something slightly truthful but heavily distorted to justify their life experiences and beliefs. In previous generations, you could not be picky about how to justify your position. If you wanted to get on a podium and give out a message to the world, you would have to seek support and help from others, and that would invariably lead you to encounter others who would challenge how you felt. And thus your movement would naturally evolve because all of a sudden, it would not simply be about you and how you felt. Now, there are genuine people out there who spew out all kinds of nonsense without any reliable way to determine what is fact or fiction. What is worse is that their followers will grab onto whatever they say and use it to form another truth about the world to conveniently explain whatever they believe in and how others who disagree are wrong, no matter how utterly incorrect or blatantly wrong they are. Thus, people end up not listening to or ignoring information that makes them uncomfortable, or in other words, challenges the simplistic way they see the world. I must be clear, this is not all people in the digital age. There are many individuals out there who do want to hear differing opinions from their own and want to have discussions about the never-ending web of complexity our world continuously weaves around us. But these people are in the minority. Emojis and static text are not replacements for the multi-layered nuance that human language, facial expressions, and body language can produce. Thus, talking to someone you have never ever met whilst also not being able to see them or hear them means that convincing someone to think differently about a topic requires that person in question to want their notions to be challenged and are ready to be convinced, which isn't a lot of people. There is a layer of superficial anonymity and safety behind a phone or computer screen, so ignoring someone's contribution to a conversation is much easier than if they were talking directly into your ear. This is because the truth does not give a flying fuck what your sensibilities are. The seemingly rare resource, objective truth, is ironically not that sought after. Lies are a much more attractive proposition because lies are formulated to appeal to our sensibilities, cushioning them and making sure we are not too uncomfortable. You have undoubtedly heard the term QAnon mentioned at some point in recent times for their exposure during the pandemic in 2020, and their role in the attempted coup in Washington, D.C. But what is it? QAnon is a far-right biblical fascist apocalypse cult conspiracy theory group that believes that an anonymous US official who uses the moniker Q Clearance Patriot is leaking top-secret info that the USA is controlled by the cabal, Satan-loving pedophiles consisting of Donald Trump's political opponents in the Democratic Party and Hollywood elite, who traffic and molest children to harvest adrenochrome which they use to get high, and that during Trump's presidency he would usher in the storm, a day in which high-level US government officials would be arrested, which will then result in the Great Awakening, in which all Americans would unite behind Trump and usher in an age of prosperity under his authoritarian fascist regime, and racial minorities and political opponents of Trump are strung up and shot in the streets. QAnon is almost one of a kind, as the movement is not actually composed of any consistent or hard and fast details, whether true or false. The conspiracy is constantly evolving with new details to the story arriving and then being forgotten almost instantly. Hydroxychloroquine, the quote cure for COVID, gained significant popularity in Q circles due to Trump's recommendation of the drug, though it is not important at all to the specific ideas behind the conspiracy. QAnon is what is referred to as an umbrella conspiracy, because the lore of it is so fluid and free-moving, literally any conspiracy can fit into it, such as 9/11 trutherism, and furthermore, while it emerged in the United States, QAnon is globally extending to alt-right circles in many countries such as Germany as well as Australia. Part of the movement's power is that it does not demand an individual give up on any predisposition or opinion they had, and is instead intent on providing answers to questions that do not actually have clear answers. Why is the world so fucked up? Because the cabal made it so. Why am I in such dire circumstances? Because China is in cahoots with the cabal and created coronavirus to suppress freedoms through lockdowns to spread the Jewish movement of communism. The answers QAnon provides its followers are inconsistent, have massive leaps in logic, are almost always extremely racist combined with other politically incorrect ideas, and do not have any basis in fact. But the number of answers it provides, and more importantly the way it uses overtly insane and ridiculous beliefs to simplify the world to the extent that all bad can be explained due to the actions of one fabricated organisation that seek harm, and to prevent the spread of the real truth, is persuasive to someone who wishes for an easy answer for questions that do not have easy answers, and quick solutions to problems that do not have easy solutions, if any at all. One of the most concerning aspects of QAnon and other similar phenomena, like flat earthers, is the fact that in the present day there does not need to be a propaganda machine to spread these ideas, because content algorithms and the easily digestible nature of internet memes make it effortless to do what the Nazis needed an entire propaganda department to do. QAnon emerged in early 2017, when the first in a series of what are called Q drops was posted to 4chan. These messages are deliberately vague, confusing, and meaningless, but essentially act as Rorschach tests on which literally infinite amounts of vacuous thought can be teased out of the verbiage. Things like hydroxychloroquine, adrenochrome, and even the paedophilic sex orgies that the cabal claimed to engage in weren't even mentioned by the titular Q. And besides hydroxychloroquine, it's literally impossible to determine exactly where they came from. Due to the nature of social media and the internet as a whole, any contradiction or opposition to these ideas are snuffed out by algorithms prioritizing engagement and getting the most out of users, while the users themselves search for vindication and become more and more distant from other schools of thought and only engage with QAnon, getting stuck in the perpetually deepening hole of false ideals. But they are not the only people who behave this way. In fact, it does not matter how truthful or based in reality a movement is in the current world. This phenomenon is not unique to QAnon and other movements like it. Feminism is a huge and complex topic spanning many decades, with numerous varieties and theories on its central premise: to achieve equality between men and women, a very admirable goal. Feminism as we know it today came into existence around the late 19th, early 20th century, though that is not to say there wasn't feminist beliefs before this time. Works such as Jane Eyre, released by Charlotte Bronte under a pen name in 1847, predated this mobilization of women. However, these memes spread and planted the seeds of what ideals and goals feminism was to be built on. The first wave secured basic rights for women in Western countries. They were granted equal contract, marriage rights, and property rights. Women's suffrage protests forced many governments to give women the vote, though New Zealand was the first state to do so in 1893, with basically every Western state following suit in the social upheaval that was the aftermath of the First World War. The second wave of feminism started in the late 1950s and went through nearly the entirety of the mid-20th century, gaining significant political power in the early 1970s. This happened concurrently with the civil rights movement championed by Martin Luther King Jr. This wave concerned itself with women breaking out of the home and dismantling the biased and sexist power structures that governed society at the time, meaning women could, and were encouraged to, have a career or as well as being a mother. The third wave sees women's lives as intersectional, demonstrating how ethnicity, class, religion, and nationality are all significant factors when discussing feminism, which has broadened the discussion substantially. Now, we enter some choppy territory here because for some, the third wave of feminism ended in about 2011, with the fourth wave beginning in 2012 and being defined by social media. Others believe the third wave hasn't ended, but regardless, this is where the problems begin. As feminism grew as a movement, it naturally broadened its scope, from basic freedoms for only white women to discussions consisting entirely of black women and how socio-economic and racial identity contribute to the type of discrimination one experiences. The internet had a pivotal role in spreading this discussion, however this has had many adverse effects. Generally speaking, most people who would call themselves feminists are not going to genuinely believe that the social problems women have are the work of some shadow organisation of men who want to make sure women don't get paid as much as men for some nefarious purpose. Most people understand that what is referred to as the patriarchy is actually a deeply complex and spread out set of structures that affect the lives of billions. Patriarchal structures do exist in our political systems and our numerous institutions, and that is the result of religion, education, familial ties, personal values, and the societal values of past generations. But, quote, dismantling the patriarchy isn't as simple as defeating an enemy because it isn't a cabal. Men are not invited to some secret political club that rules the world. Many just go about their lives as anyone else would. Men are not women's enemies. Dismantling the decaying patriarchal structures that negatively and unfairly affect women requires intellectual discussion and intelligent action. The use of language like, quote, men rule the world, or, quote, the patriarchy is the problem, whether intentionally or not, promote the idea that there is a, quote, cabal that all men are a part of in some manner. It's an oversimplification of an extremely nuanced problem, and it results in the devolution of the debate. The most damaging effect of this insidious rhetoric is that people who act like they are unequivocally in the right is that in the modern day, these people can get a platform. Very quickly it becomes impossible to tell what is true feminism and what is garbage. Looking up the word feminism on Google gives results that are very questionable in terms of how it actually represents the movement, with few exceptions. Rapidly, behaviour like this undermines the very core of what feminism stands for, what it wanted to achieve and what it has achieved, and what it still might be able to achieve. Feminism's debate has become diluted and obfuscated. Worse, since outrage, controversy and anger is more appealing to the general masses than reasoned intellectual thought, that's what the algorithm provides. Not just to women who think this way, but to men who are anti-feminist and are seeking vindication for that belief, and alienating everyone else who would rather not partake in debates that are barely coherent conversations at all. This can be seen in certain aspects of Black Lives Matter as well. Alongside this, climate denial and other similar movements like anti-vaxxers, maskers and lockdowners are a product of this process also. It doesn't matter how many times the government pressures people to wear masks or stay in their homes. The fact that these people can choose what they absorb and alter the narrative in their heads makes the act of talking to them the equivalent of attempting to have a debate about road rules with a car. Going for everything I've been talking about. Since the act of disagreeing is transformed into further proof of their correctness, a self-radicalization takes place, making the actions of these QAnoners and anti-maskers more and more extreme to the point that institutions that exist to help people and save lives are attacked and destroyed. Climate change is horribly undersupported by the general masses due to the staggering amounts of misinformed opinions flooding the mainstream avenues of content, and thus not enough governments are taking the issue seriously enough to make a difference. I mentioned earlier how the Patriots in Metal Gear Solid 2 are a literal manifestation of all-encompassing artificial enemies created to serve someone's personal narrative. These are some of the best examples of what I mean. As I've seen, the Patriots are the patriarchy, cabal, Jews, NASA, capitalists, fascists, socialists, or simply them or they. The dynamic with Solid Snake and the Patriots is very similar to the women of this subreddit, these women on the street, this activist, communists, these men, all reminiscent of each other. People behaving like children, justifying petty arguments and horrible behaviour through semi-fictional self-victimization. Raiden represents the majority, people stuck believing one truth and jumping to another, to the point in which discourse becomes such a mess of words, partial facts, with mostly nonsense, that it all collapses into one big mess of noise. In fact, I'm coining it now, the Patriots paradox, the psychological phenomenon of demonizing and mythologizing a fictitious or semi-fictitious enemy in order to justify evangelistic and toxic behavior towards perceived political enemies. Hegelian dialectics, Mimetics, the evolution of thought itself, is being suppressed. Not by an organization, not by an authoritarian cabal, but by us, the people who think they are fighting those who are suppressing free thought. But surely there is a solution. Well, ironically, the main antagonist of Metal Gear Solid 2, the very enemy we make up to fight every day, gives us a solution. Please bear in mind, this game was written in 1999.
I will triumph over the Patriots and liberate us all, and we will become the Sons of Liberty!
Dryden, are you receiving? We're still here.
How's that possible? The AI was destroyed.
Only GW.
Who are you?
To begin with, we're not what you'd call human. Over the past 200 years, a kind of consciousness formed layer by layer in the crucible of the White House. It's not unlike the way life started in the oceans 4 billion years ago. The White House was our primordial soup, a base of evolution. We are formless. We are the very discipline and morality that Americans invoke so often. How can anyone hope to eliminate us? As long as this nation exists, so will we.
Cut the crap! If you're immortal, why would you take away individual freedoms and censor the net?
Jack, don't be silly.
Don't you know that our plans have your interests, not ours, in mind?
What?
Jack, listen carefully, like a good boy.
The mapping of the human genome was completed early this century. As a result, the evolutionary log of the human race lay open to us.
We started with genetic engineering, and in the end, we succeeded in digitizing life itself.
But there are things not covered by genetic information.
What do you mean?
Human memories, ideas, culture, history.
Genes don't contain any record of human history.
Is it something that should not be passed on? Should that information be left at the mercy of nature?
We've always kept records of our lives, through words, pictures, symbols, from tablets to books.
But not all the information was inherited by later generations. A small percentage of the whole was selected and processed, then passed on. Not unlike genes, really.
That's what history is, Jack.
But in the current digitized world, trivial information is accumulating every second, preserved in all its triteness, never fading, always accessible.
Rumors about petty issues, misinterpretations, slander.
All this junk data, preserved in an unfiltered state, growing at an alarming rate.
It will only slow down social progress, reduce the rate of evolution.
Right. You seem to think that our plan is one of censorship.
Are you telling me it's not?
You're being silly. What we propose to do is not to control content, but to create context.
Create context?
The digital society furthers human flaws and selectively rewards development of convenient half-truths. Just look at the strange juxtapositions of morality around you.
Billions spent on new weapons in order to humanely murder other humans.
Rights of criminals are given more respect than the privacy of their victims.
Although there are people suffering in poverty, huge donations are made to protect endangered species. Everyone grows up being told the same thing.
Be nice to other people.
But beat out the competition.
You're special. Believe in yourself and you will succeed.
But it's obvious from the start that only a few can succeed.
You exercise your right to freedom, and this is the result. All rhetoric to avoid conflict and protect each other from hurt. The untested truths, spun by different interests, continue to churn and accumulate in the sandbox of political correctness and value systems.
Everyone withdraws into their own small gated community, afraid of a larger forum. They stay inside their little ponds, leaking whatever truth suits them into the growing cesspool of society at large.
The different cardinal truths neither clash nor mesh. No one is invalidated, but nobody is right.
Not even natural selection can take place here. The world is being engulfed in truth.
And this is the way the world ends. Not with a bang, but a whimper.
We're trying to stop that from happening.
It's our responsibility as rulers. Just as in genetics, unnecessary information and memory must be filtered out to stimulate the evolution of the species.
And you think you're qualified to decide what's necessary and not?
Absolutely. Who else could wade through the sea of garbage you people produce, retrieve valuable truths, and even interpret their meaning for later generations?
That's what it means to create context.
I'll decide for myself what to believe and what to pass on.
But is that even your own idea?
Or something Snake told you?
That's the proof of your incompetence right there. You lack the qualifications to exercise free will.
That's not true. I have the right.
Does something like a self exist inside of you?
That which you call self serves as nothing more than a mask to cover your own being.
In this era of ready-made truths, self is just something used to preserve those positive emotions that you occasionally feel.
Another possibility is that self is a concept you conveniently borrowed under the logic that it would endow you with some sense of strength.
That's crap!
Is it? Would you prefer that someone else tell you? All right then. Explain it to him.
Jack, you're simply the best, and you got there all by yourself.
Oh, what happened? Do you feel lost? Why not try a bit of soul-searching?
Don't think you'll find anything, though.
Ironic that although self is something that you yourself fashioned, every time something goes wrong, you turn around and place the blame on something else.
It's not my fault. It's not your fault.
In denial, you simply resort to looking for another, more convenient truth in order to make yourself feel better.
Leaving behind in an instant the so-called truth you once embraced.
Should someone like that be able to decide what is truth?
Should someone like you even have the right to decide?
You've done nothing but abuse your freedom.
You don't deserve to be free.
We're not the ones smothering the world. You are.
The individual is supposed to be weak, but far from powerless. A single person has the potential to ruin the world.
And the age of digitized communication has given even more power to the individual. Too much power for an immature species.
Building a legacy involves figuring out what is wanted and what needs to be done for that goal. All this you used to struggle with. Now we think for you.
We are your guardians, after all.
You want to control human thought? Human behavior?
Of course. Anything can be quantified nowadays. That's what this exercise was designed to prove.
You fell in love with me just as you were meant to, after all. Isn't that right, Jack?
Ocelot was not told the whole truth, to say the least.
We rule an entire nation. Of what interest would a single soldier, no matter how able, be to us?
The S3 plan does not stand for solid snake simulation. What it does stand for is selection for societal sanity. The S3 is a system for controlling human will and consciousness. S3 is not you, a soldier trained in the image of Solid Snake. It is a method, a protocol that created a circumstance that made you what you are.
So you see, we're the S3, not you.
What you experienced was the final test of its effectiveness.
That's crazy.
You heard what President Johnson said.
The Arsenal's GW system is the key to their supremacy.
The objective of this exercise was to establish such a method. We used Shadow Moses as a paradigm for the exercise.
I wonder if you would have preferred a fantasy setting.
We chose that backdrop because of its extreme circumstances. It was an optimal test for S3's crisis management capacity. If the model could trigger, control, and solve this, it would be ready for any contingency. And now, we have our proof. Raiden, there are also reasons behind your selection. Solidus raised plenty of other child soldiers. Do you know why we chose you over them? It was because you were the only one who refused to acknowledge the past. All the others remember what they were and pay for it daily.
But you turn your back on everything you don't like. You do whatever you like, see only the things you like, and for yourself alone.
Yes, Rose can attest to that.
You refused to see me for what I was. I lied to you, but I wanted to be caught. You pretended to be understanding, to be a gentleman. You never made a conscious attempt to reach out to me. The only time you did was when I gave you no choice but to do so.
I was just trying not to.
What? Trying not to hurt me? Dear, the one you were trying not to hurt was yourself. Avoiding the truth under the guise of kindness is all that you did. It occurred to you to do nothing but look out for yourself. Even if you claim that it was for my sake, that feeling was nowhere to be seen. In the end, everything was for your sake. I was never part of the picture.
Exactly right. So you see, you're a perfect representative of the masses we need to protect. This is why we chose you. You accepted the fiction we've provided, obeyed our orders, and did everything you were told to. The exercise is a resounding success.
Didn't I tell you that GW was still incomplete? But not anymore, thanks to you.
Your persona, experiences, triumphs, and defeats are nothing but byproducts. The real objective was ensuring that we could generate and manipulate them. It's taken a lot of time and money, but it was well worth it considering the results. I think that's enough talk. It's time for the final exercise. Raiden, take Solidus down.
Think again. I'm through doing what I'm told.
Oh, really? Aren't you forgetting something?
If you die, my child dies.
The termination of vital signals from your nanomachines means the death of Olga's child. Not to mention the death of Rose. She's wired the same way.
Rose, does she actually exist?
Of course I do, Jack. You have to believe me.
Damn!
It will be a fight to the death.
Solidus at least wants you dead.
We will collect the necessary data from this last fight. Then we'll consider the exercise closed. So, Jack the Ripper, will it be Solidus, the Patriot's creation, or you, Solidus's creation? Our beloved monsters, enjoy yourselves.
The irony is quite rich. Many contemporary analyses of Metal Gear Solid 2 have reached a similar conclusion, unofficially formulated by group consensus. It is postulated that the overarching point of Metal Gear Solid 2 makes is that at some point in the post-truth era, the world will be so overrun with ready-made and alternative truths that humanity will need to install a system like GW and the Patriots for us to continue to advance technologically and socially in exchange for our personal freedoms. While this is certainly not an incorrect conclusion, I do feel that it is incomplete. Hideo Kojima and his massive team could have left this final codec as the total ending for Metal Gear Solid 2, with the residual thoughts lingering in the player's mind that humanity is seemingly destined for such an eventuality. But they didn't. Mimetics is the study of how memes propagate, similar to genetics. Though the legitimacy of this area of study is in question, Richard Dawkins, the original proprietor of the concept, has distanced himself from the area of study, though it isn't clear exactly why. It's possible that due to the commodification and misinterpretation of what memes actually are, have contributed to the discrediting of the idea as something that should be studied. So, to see what he originally intended by this concept, I'm going to read a part of Richard's chapter on memes. Cultural transmission is not unique to man. The best non-human example I can think of was described by P.F. Jenkins in the song of a bird called the saddleback, which lives on islands off New Zealand. During most of the time Jenkins was there was a fixed number of songs on the island, a kind of song pool from which each young male drew his repertoire. But occasionally, Jenkins would be privileged to witness the invention of a new song, which occurred by a mistake in imitation of an old one. There are other examples of cultural evolution in birds and monkeys, but these are just interesting oddities. It is our own species that really shows what cultural evolution can do. I think a new kind of replicator has recently emerged on this very planet. It is staring us in the face. It is still in its infancy, still drifting clumsily about in its primeval soup, but already it is achieving evolutionary change at a rate that leaves the old gene panting far behind. The new soup is the soup of human culture. We need a name for the new replicator, a noun that conveys the idea of a unit of cultural transmission or a unit of imitation. I hope my classist friends will forgive me if I abbreviate mime to meme. The point I am making now is that even if we look on the dark side and assume that an individual man is fundamentally selfish, our conscious foresight, our capacity to simulate the future in imagination, could save us from the worst selfish excesses of the blind replicators. We have at least the mental equipment to foster long-term selfish interests rather than short-term selfish interests. We have the power to defy the selfish genes of our birth and, if necessary, the selfish memes of our indoctrination. We can even discuss ways of deliberately cultivating and nurturing pure, disinterested altruism, something that has no place in nature, something that has never existed in the whole history of the world. We are built as gene machines and cultured as meme machines, but we have the power to turn against our creators. We alone can rebel against the tyranny of selfish replicators. Richard Dawkins, The Selfish Gene, 1976. Despite the simplification of what memes have become to most of the public, memes, as Dawkins explained, still hold the power they always have, even if their power is unrecognized. Women all over the globe hold memes in addition to their genes. The mimetic experiences of women's trials and tribulations live on in all of the women of today. Similarly, young men hold the memes and genes of their forefathers, and have the power and responsibility to improve the world from what it has been before, and may perhaps alter what the fundamental meaning of being a man actually is. The same can be said for black people, white people, the LGBTQ+ community, and all other groups you can think of. The penultimate tragedy of the modern world is the oversimplification and deconstruction of the meme via the internet, and commodifying the culture of humanity into easily digestible snippets of worthless information that are used to construct our modern personas. True memes, essays, movies, music, videos, short films, novellas, novels, comics, art, and the people who create them, are drowning in a sea of garbage, unable to utilize the connectivity of the internet to allow these works to truly propagate and spread their ideas as needed. The creators of Metal Gear Solid 2 definitely seem to hold the same opinion. The internet isn't malicious unto itself, but we need to change the way we interact with it, that we need to become consciously aware of how conscious thought has decayed. The concerning and truthful matter is that we do not have a solution to the epistemological crisis, but perhaps the solution is right under our noses. The reason I like Hegelian dialectics and other similar ideas is because it explains that human society inevitably ends up in an equilibrium, and that equilibrium is what would have once been called chaos. The world is in constant flux, as it should be, and perhaps the solution to the epistemological crisis is a middle ground between the Patriots' plan and the free internet visionaries like Douglas Rushkoff once envisioned. I'm going to play the ending of Metal Gear Solid 2 now, and the majority of what is shown won't need suggestive commentary. However, I will if it will elucidate something. Otherwise, all I ask is that you watch it and think about it. Do with those thoughts what you will.
choose who or what they are. The memories you have and the role you were assigned are burdens you had to carry. It doesn't matter if they were real or not. That's never the point. There's no such thing in the world as absolute reality. Most of what they call real is actually fiction. What you think you see is only as real as your brain tells you it is.
Then, what am I supposed to believe in? What am I going to leave behind when I'm through?
We can tell other people about having faith. What we had faith in. What we found important enough to fight for. It's not whether you were right or wrong, but how much faith you were willing to have. That decides the future. The Patriots are a kind of ongoing fiction too, come to think of it. Listen, don't obsess over words so much. Find the meaning behind the words, then decide. You can find your own name. And your own future.
Decide for myself?
And whatever you choose will be you.
I don't know if I can.
I know you didn't have much in terms of choices this time. But everything you felt, thought about during this mission is yours. And what you decide to do with them is your choice.
You mean start over?
Yeah, a clean slate, a new name, new memories. Choose your own legacy. It's for you to decide. It's up to you. By the way, what is that?
Dog tags.
Anyone you know?
No, never heard the name before. I'll pick my own name, and my own life. I'll find something worth passing on. They taught me some good things, too.
I know. We've inherited freedom from all those who fought for it. We all have the freedom to spread the word, even me.
Snake, what about Olga's child?
Don't worry. I'll find him. Count on it. As long as you keep yourself alive, he's safe.
Do you know where Liquid went?
I put a transmitter on his ray.
Did he head for the Patriots?
Yeah, but I have a feeling they gave Ocelot a bogus location to begin with. Cheer up. We have a better lead. This contains the list of all the Patriots.
But Ocelot took it.
The one we gave you wasn't the real thing.
What?
This virus is coded to destroy only a specific part of GW, namely the information about the Patriots' identity. Which means that there's a parameter coded in here that defines what that information is.
I get it. Analyze the code and you can probably find out where they operate. Count me in.
No, you have things to do first. And people you need to talk to.
Snake?
What's wrong?
Nothing. Can I ask you something? Who am I, really?
I wouldn't know. But we're going to find out together, aren't we?
Oh. Yeah.
See me for what I am, okay?
I know.
Do you remember this place?
Of course. This is where we first met. I remember now. Today is the day I met you.
That's it.
I think I found something to pass along to the future.
What?
He said all living things want their genes to live on.
Are you talking about the baby?
Yeah. But genes aren't the only thing you pass on. There are too many things that aren't written into our DNA. It's up to us to teach that to our children.
What kind of things?
About the environment, our ideas, our culture, poetry, compassion, sorrow, joy. We'll tell them everything together.
Is that a proposal?
This is for your ears only.
Life isn't just about passing on your genes. We can leave behind much more than just DNA. Through speech, music, literature, and movies, what we've seen, heard, felt, anger, joy, and sorrow. These are the things I will pass on. That's what I live for. We need to pass the torch and let our children read our messy and sad history by its light. We have all the magic of the digital age to do that with. The human race will probably come to an end sometime, and new species may rule over this planet. Earth may not be forever, but we still have the responsibility to leave what traces of life we can. Building the future and keeping the past alive are one and the same thing.
Snake, you there? It's me. I've finished going over that disk.
Did you find the Patriots list?
Of course. It contains the personal data of 12 people. There was a name on it. Snake, it was one of our biggest contributors.
What's going on around here?
I don't know.
Anyway, where are they?
Well, we were right about them being on Manhattan, but...
But what?
They're already dead. All 12 of them.
When did it happen?
Well, about 100 years ago.
What the hell?
at the stars and the sky up above and think, what am I?